Greetings everyone, I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title up there, time for another movie review. This is of the 2025 supernatural horror film that is directed by Ben Leonberg, and this is his directorial debut. According to IMDb, he's only directed a couple other things. I haven't really heard of them, so I'm guessing there have been stuff that you see like at conventions and other stuff. And this is, of course, Good Boy. And it is written by Leonberg and Alex Cannon, and that's Cannon with two N's, by the way. And it stars Shane Jensen, Arielle Friedman, Larry Fessenden, and of course we got Leonberg's dog Indy playing the titular good boy. Now, this is a horror film that really gets down in the nitty-gritty when it comes to building suspense and using some of the old school ways. Not to say that there aren't any special effects in the film. It's mainly for shadows and all that at certain parts in the film. And it's one that really builds up to the end. You kind of have an idea of what's going to go on near the end, but it also makes you wonder, okay, which one of the two ways is it going to go here? And part of the way that it feels a little fresh is the fact that we're following the film from the perspective of the titular good boy. That's right, we're following this film from the perspective of the dog. Some people might be like, yeah, that's not that good. Because, I mean, we've had stuff like that happen in the past. Like there was a scene in, I think it was Hills Have Eyes 2, where the dog has a flashback. Not saying there's anything wrong with the dog remembering, but from what I hear, it just doesn't come off as well. Here, everything worked. Because while it's from the dog's point of view, it's not shown like how a dog would think it 100%. So it's not like in, say, an episode of the Rugrats where other than his name, anytime the humans speak, they're like, right, where it's obvious he's not understanding a word of what they say, just their tone. Here, probably for the simplicity for the audience, we understand what's going on. And there's really only a couple scenes where it literally is from his POV, like literal. And those ones, the camera has an effect on it where you can see it is from a dog's perspective. And the fact the film is only a little over an hour, 73 minutes, that it doesn't really feel like it drags with that. Now, if you've seen the poster, it is the dog and like a little shadow-looking claw thing hanging over him. So let me get into the plot to explain a little bit of it. We follow the dog's owner, Todd, who's a young man. He's suffering from a chronic lung disease. We see him at the beginning, him suffering some type of attack, where he is found by a relative. He's taken to the hospital. After he gets out, he relocates from New York to his late grandfather's rural, uninhabited home with his dog, who of course is Indy. Now, they never state 100% where exactly they are, but the film was shot in New Jersey, so it wouldn't surprise me if that's where they relocated to rural parts of New Jersey. Now, his sister Vera is worrying about Todd's isolation at the house, especially considering that the grandfather's home has a rumor that it's haunted, which when you hear that in a film, you're always like, okay, that's not going to be good. And that the haunting led to his death. Now, while they're there, he's looking through a lot of stuff. You can see that no one's lived in the house for a while, but their grandfather left a good amount of stuff, including like old VHSs of crappy horror movies and some VH stuff that he himself recorded. And it's interesting as a horror fan seeing like the old crappy horror films he puts in, and also seeing the VHSs that he himself recorded. And each time you see one, you're like, okay, the grandfather went even more downhill than the last time we saw him. So it looks like there might be some truth to the fact that whatever is out there contributed to his death. Now, they always say that animals have another sense for stuff that's not quite right, like the whole thing about them sensing when an earthquake's going to happen, which there is some truth in that. I mean, in Japan, the whole thing about, I think it's the earth being on the back of a catfish, comes from the fact that catfish seem to get a little more active in the lakes out there right before one. Indy, he can sense there's something not quite right with the house, and the whole time you're like, okay, what's he sensing? And he starts to see like weird shadow things, and you're like, okay, is he just seeing things, or is he actually seeing things that are there? Now, as it turns out, he is seeing things that are there, but it's not all bad things, because they mention at one point that right before the grandfather died, his last dog, a golden retriever named Bandit, just up and vanished. Well, Bandit is not 100% gone. He's still there. And at one point, Indy does encounter Bandit's spirit. And he kind of gets a little flash of like, okay, not all right is right here. And most of the film is Indy trying to protect his owner. And there's various parts where the shadow thing is going at it. And it makes you wonder, is this shadow thing making his owner worse? Or is this the direct cause of why he has this coughing up fit? The film never elaborates on it. It's one of those things that like they kind of show a little bit and it makes you wonder. Just like what this shadow thing is. The film never states exactly what it is. And at the end of the film, me and my friend Tiffany were actually talking about it. Tiffany thinks it is death, which, with how the film is set, you can really see it, of that, like, death has been stalking him the whole film, and it finally came for him at the very end. To me, especially with, like, how a couple of shots where we see more of the full shadow are set up, it kind of strikes me it's like one of those shadow figures that there's a lot of folklore about in different parts of the United States. You know, like the shadow man with hats and other type of shadow beings. And it just so happened that this is one of the places that it is haunted at. You can look at either way of it. There's probably another third, maybe a fourth and fifth way to look at it. Those are just the two ways that we were talking about it. Now, the ending of the film, and in order to talk about this, I am going to have to give a spoiler on this. So if you haven't seen the film, you might want to skip over this, but if you don't care, here it is. The ending of the film, it is bittersweet. What I mean by that is that Todd dies. And what happens is that there's a part where Todd ends up tying Indy to the doghouse that's outside. You know, Indy, of course, gets out. And he goes down into the basement. Now, with how they frame the basement and the outside shots, and like the few times we look down in there, and the one time early in the film we go down there, it definitely comes off as a Schrodinger's gun, that it is going to play into the end of the film, because it's one of those things you don't build up something like that without making it important later. And it becomes important in the climax, because the shadow thing, whatever it is, it drags Todd down there and through a door, which is why I think you can look at it either way. Now, Indy goes in there and he pulls Todd out, but then Todd is like, you're a good dog, but you cannot save me. And he's pulled back in there, and that's the end of him. Now, before Indy gets down there, because he has to go back down through a side door because the door inside is locked, he sees the body of Bandit. So we see the Bandit did not fully run off. He stayed down there. And they mentioned at one point that the grandfather was found dead in the basement. So whatever is taking Todd took the grandfather. And the fact that Bandit's body is outside the door there shows that, like a very faithful and loving dog who stood by where his owner was until he succumbed. And of course with that we're like, oh no, don't tell me. Well, the next morning or sometime later, Vera shows up. We only hear her off screen. We don't see her. And with how sad it is, it's obvious that she found Todd's body first. And she sees that Indy is there and she's like calling to him. And you can tell that Indy is thinking like, okay, should I stay here and be a good dog like Bandit, or should I go? Like my master told me to. And of course, he goes up to Vera, and that's how the film ends. And that's what I mean by it's bittersweet. It's that Indy couldn't save his owner, and his owner still died. But he survived. And when we see that the dog survived, someone that was actually sitting to the right of me and Tiffany was like, oh, thank God, the dog lived. I could only imagine if the dog had died, they probably would have yelled something like, that's fucking bullshit. So the dog lived, so that was a good thing. And that's really all there is with the plot. Now, I mentioned earlier the special effects. There's like some parts where it's like very subtle CGI for the shadowing, but it's more towards the end when the shadow is actually coming for Todd and then going at Indy, where it plays it up a bit more. But even then, they hold back a little bit, because the film was made for $6 million, which is a very low budget by modern standards, but it uses it very effectively. because, like I said, most of the time it's in-camera stuff, but it's only the shadow creature, whatever it is, that they really use any type of special effects. And I think it's the times where it's only implying it where the film is at its strongest, but with how it builds up, I think by the time we actually get to see the special effects, it's built up enough and earned it enough to where, okay, it works. And like I said, the film's like 70 minutes and it goes by at a pretty quick pace. There are a couple slow moments, but those are the moments there to build the tension, so it didn't really drag that much for me. I was just wondering when I was sitting in the theater what was going on with some of it, because I had only seen like the poster and all that and hadn't even seen any marketing for the film, but I got under speed with it pretty quickly. This is a film I mainly recommend if you're a fan of horror and if you're a dog person. If you're not a dog person, the film might not stick with you as much. It might stick the landing, you never know, but more so if you're a dog person. There's still a chance you might not like it. Like I said, this film is probably not going to be for everyone, even if you are a dog person or a fan of horror, but it is at least worth one watch because it's only like 73 minutes. It goes by pretty quickly, even with the slower tension building moments. And plus, if you really are more into seeing new horror-related stuff in theaters, or even if you wait until it hits home video to watch it, definitely worth it for that, I think. And it's actually making some good money. I mean, hold on, the $6 million was the box office, not the budget, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was also its budget. Let me check IMDb real quick, see if they have any word on what the budget was. Nothing. They only got the gross still. They're saying about the same, and that it made 2.3 in its first weekend. So that's really all there is to say about it. I mean, Leonberg does a good job as a first-time director. I actually look to see what other type of horror-related stuff he does, or if he branches out into non-horror genre. Shane and Arielle as our characters, they do all right. I mean, it's more Shane that we see. Larry, he plays a neighbor character. No, actually, he plays Todd's grandfather, so we only see him in a couple scenes here and there. I'll look and see what else he did real quick. So he was in the 2000s Hamlet episode of Law and Order: Criminal Intent. I'm looking to see if there's anything I've seen. He was in Cabin Fever 2. I'm not really seeing anything familiar that I've actually watched. Oh, he played a radio actor in Killers of the Flower Moon and a security guard in Maxine. Interesting. So that's really all there is to say about it. Till next time, everybody.